Imagine stepping back in time, not 100 years, not 1,000, but 300,000 years. The world you see is almost unrecognizable. Giant ice sheets cover huge parts of the planet, and the air is crisp and cold. This is the Pleistocene epoch, the Ice Age. And in this harsh, unforgiving world, a new story is just beginning to unfold, the story of us, Homo sapiens. So, what was Earth like back then? Forget sprawling cities and highways. Picture vast, windswept grasslands, dense forests teeming with unfamiliar life, and towering mountains of ice. This was a world ruled by megafauna. Woolly mammoths with their immense, curving tusks roamed the steppes. Saber-toothed cats with fangs as long as your hand stalked their prey. Giant ground sloths, bigger than modern bears, lazily stripped leaves from trees. It was a world of giants, a place both majestic and terrifying. And amidst these titans, our ancestors were carving out a life for themselves. These early humans weren't the hunched-over figures you might see in old cartoons. They looked a lot like we do today. They walked upright, had similarly sized brains, and were starting to show the sparks of ingenuity that would define our species. But their lives were unimaginably different and incredibly difficult. Every day was a battle for survival. Home wasn't a house. It was a cave, a rock shelter, or a temporary camp made of branches and animal hides. These small, tight-knit groups were constantly on the move, following the herds they hunted and the changing seasons. The concept of staying in one place for your whole life just didn't exist. You were a nomad, your world defined by the horizon and the resources you could find. Fire was the heart of their society. It was their source of warmth against the biting cold, a way to cook food, making it safer and easier to digest, and a flickering shield against the predators that lurked in the darkness. Mastering fire was one of the most important milestones in human history, allowing us to survive and thrive in environments we otherwise couldn't. What did they eat? You couldn't just pop down to the corner store. Our ancestors were expert hunter-gatherers. The men would often form hunting parties, tracking animals for days. This wasn't a simple task. It required incredible skill, patience, and cooperation. They used stone-tipped spears, cleverly crafted tools that took time and effort to make. Hunting a mammoth or a giant bison was a high-risk, high-reward endeavor. One successful hunt could feed the entire group for weeks, providing not just meat, but also hides for clothing, bones for tools, and sinew for cordage. Nothing was wasted. Meanwhile, the women and children played an equally crucial role. They were the gatherers. Possessing an encyclopedic knowledge of the local environment, they knew which plants were edible, which were medicinal, and which were poisonous. They gathered roots, berries, nuts, and insects, providing a more stable and reliable source of calories. That complemented the boom and bust cycle of hunting. This division of labor wasn't rigid, but it was a strategy that worked, ensuring the group had the best chance of survival. Let's talk about their tools. The technology of 300,000 years ago was the Stone Age, specifically the Middle Paleolithic. The signature tool was the hand axe, a teardrop-shaped piece of flint or other stone, carefully chipped to create a sharp edge. It was the Swiss Army knife of its time, used for everything from butchering animals to chopping wood and digging for roots. Creating these tools was an art form. It required a deep understanding of how different stones fracture and a steady hand. Imagine spending hours, even days, chipping away at a rock to create the perfect tool that your life might depend on. This was the dawn of technology, the first steps on a path that would eventually lead to smartphones and spacecraft. But what about their minds? What did they think about? What did they believe? This is the hardest part to know for sure, as thoughts don't fossilize. But we have clues. The discovery of burial sites from this period suggests they had a concept of an afterlife, or at least a deep respect for the dead. Some graves show bodies placed in specific positions, sometimes with tools or other objects. This wasn't just discarding a body, it was a ritual. It implies a complex social and spiritual life. They were beginning to ask the big questions. What happens when we die? Is there something more to the world than what we can see? They also communicated, while we don't know exactly what their language sounded like. The level of cooperation needed for large-scale hunting and the passing down of tool-making skills strongly suggests they had a sophisticated form of communication. They could plan, strategize, and share knowledge across generations. This ability to transmit information is a cornerstone of human culture. And while we haven't found elaborate cave paintings from this specific period, they were using pigments like red ochre. They might have used it to paint their bodies, decorate their tools, or create the very first forms of art on perishable surfaces like wood or skin. They were expressing themselves, creating a shared identity, and building the foundations of culture. It's also important to remember that our ancestors weren't alone. The world 300,000 years ago was home to several other human species. In Europe and Asia, there were the Neanderthals, our close cousins. In other parts of Asia, there were the Denisovans and Homo erectus. It was a world with multiple kinds of people, and we know that our ancestors met and interacted with them. In fact, most modern humans outside of Africa have a small amount of Neanderthal DNA in their genomes. This means our stories are intertwined. We didn't just replace them, in some cases, we connected with them. The life of an early Homo sapiens was short and brutal. The average life expectancy was probably around 30 years. Disease, injury, starvation, and predation were constant threats. A broken leg could be a death sentence. But they were resilient, they were intelligent, and they were social. They survived by relying on each other, by sharing resources, and by working together. Their small communities were everything: their family, their safety net, and their world. So, as we stand here, 300,000 years later, surrounded by the comforts of the modern world, it's humbling to look back. Every achievement of humanity, every book ever written, every symphony ever composed, every city ever built, rests on the foundation laid by these early pioneers. They braved an ice age, faced down fearsome beasts, and took the first critical steps on the journey of becoming human. They are our ancestors, and their story is our story. Their legacy is in our DNA, and our ability to create, to cooperate, and to wonder. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey back in time. If you found this as fascinating as I do, please hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into our incredible past. What part of their life do you find most amazing? Let me know in the comments below. See you next time.